So today, I really wanted to take an opportunity to speak about relationships in Southeast Asia. Before we get into the relationships, what's really important to bear in mind is that when you're leaving your country, when you're leaving the West or wherever it is that you're coming from, but I can speak particularly to the West or North America specifically, we have a certain idea of how we communicate with the opposite sex about relationships. Could be a boyfriend girlfriend type situation, or if you're more marriage oriented like I am, it's one of those areas where you usually have an idea about the pace in which things go and about how you feel about navigating the process of possibly getting married. With that said, one thing that I find to be very important for me to advise anyone who's contemplating a move to Southeast Asia is to network, really network, get to know people before you get over here, and ask them questions about relationships and the idea of commitment, the idea of exclusivity, and what their idea of those two things is. Because from what I have seen in my time in Southeast Asia, is that whenever you're talking to a woman, for example, from over here, and there's different countries here, broadly, a lot of it can be, I suppose, just referred to just Southeast Asian women. A lot of it relates to the fact that a lot of the women over here in this part of the world, their idea of relationships, time frames, and commitment can be very different. So if you're coming here from the United States and you have this idea that you just want to take it slow, get to know some women, and not necessarily rush into something, one thing that you will come across, and I can't speak for all women, I can't speak for all men, but what I can do is speak for myself. And one thing that I have come across is the desire for exclusivity at a relatively early stage in the time in which you're getting to know them. And mind you, I'm not saying necessarily that that's courtship. I'm not necessarily saying that you're boyfriend girlfriend. What I'm saying is that as a Western man in this part of the world, you do have a wide selection. I'll refer it to it like that. You have you have a wide selection of ladies. So when some of these ladies are aware of that and they know about that, a lot of times, they will be very intense in terms of talking to you about commitment and what you're looking for. And I'm speaking in terms of people that are actually interested in you, not just talking about, say in the Philippines, you're just getting to know somebody and right off the bat, they start asking you for money. And I'll just give you a little bit of a hint here, or not a hint, but an actual scenario. I met this one woman, this Filipino Muslim woman, on I think it was called Salams. It's a Muslim matrimonial dating app, basically. And met her, went to the mall, and asked me to buy a $200 bottle of perfume. That was a big resounding no. No. So that's just one example. You're going to have some people that want to take you for a ride. They want to see what they can get from you. But in this video, what we really want to do is talk about women who are genuinely interested in you. So I don't know, maybe take a pencil and a notepad or something. And I'm just going to give you some of my own advice here. You really have to, first and foremost, know what you're looking for and know where you're going. When you know what you're looking for and you know where you're going, you're going to have a better idea about what your values are, what your outlook is, and what your priorities are. Do you want marriage? Consider that and make sure that when you're talking to somebody, when you're doing anything like this, when it's with one particular person, if you find yourself conflicted, have a make kind of like have a kind of a list, kind of like a pros and cons, type situation, to where you can really kind of narrow it down. But one big thing that I want to get in this video is that you really have to be careful with your social media. Over here in Southeast Asia, even when you're just, passively, casually chatting with people, before you actually get over here, or even after you've already been here in Southeast Asia, it could be any country. Even after you've already met up with a woman, you visited, you spent time, you did a variety of different things together, like going to a night market or a wet market, getting ice cream, just that kind of thing. Whenever you're getting back, say you're in your Airbnb, while you're just doing your thing and you're scrolling on your Instagram, or you're just watching your YouTube or whatever it is that you do on whatever streaming device you're using, be prepared for one of these ladies, or could be a few of them, to be really looking at your social media, and be careful about that. And the reason I'm saying be careful about that is because sometimes you will have a scenario, you will have an encounter where someone that you have not made any commitment to, someone whom you're not in a courtship with, you're not their boyfriend, it's not that kind of a situation. Uh, just based on comments, even if it's not even on your own social media, it could be on somebody else's social media that you are part of, and a link comes across, and somebody says, "Oh, hey, I know this person. Oh, hey, you know this person? How do you know that person?" And next thing you know, detonation. I'm speaking from experience here, okay? I've been involved over here in Malaysia, and I've done some charity work, and yeah, so basically had a video that went around. I was in it doing some good deeds, and yeah, so I had a situation that came up, and wow, wow is all I can say. So what I can take from this and what I would want to share with you is that, not only just be careful with your social media, but think about that. You're going to know how to think about that for yourself, for what is best for you. You're going to think about how, you might handle that, how you might situate different things on your social media. So you just really want to do it in a way where the risk of that kind of a thing happening is mitigated. So after that, you know, depending on the person that you're dealing with, if they've come across you and they are interested in you, they're going to really press hard for exclusivity. Even if you're not necessarily committed, even though you're just barely, your tippy toe is at the threshold of a potential courtship, there's going to be an expectation of exclusivity. And that's one of those things where you do have to be careful. You do have to be mindful, but also to be mindful of the fact that, you have to do what's best for you. You came out here for you to enjoy your life. And part of you enjoying your life is having a healthy set of boundaries. That's one thing that I really have to advise you about, is that when you're heading over to Southeast Asia or any other part of the world, just mind your boundaries. Be careful with your boundaries, you know, because those boundaries, if you just don't establish any boundaries, anything can happen. Anything can happen. And then if something, happens down the line, and there's another social media situation again, because you've established boundaries, you have ensured to some degree, depending on the person, depending on the circumstances or situation, when you set the right boundaries, you are making sure to keep your life, to keep your right to privacy, solid. And that's one thing that you don't want to lose. You do not want to lose your privacy. Now, I am doing YouTube here, and it's something that I do think about. And on this video, I might I don't know. I might very well just disable comments just for the sake of taking my own advice. That's not necessarily to say you've got anything to hide. It's to say that, you have to have some foresight. You do have to have some foresight because over here, things are different. And you have to really check your mentality. You have to check your own paradigm in terms of what do relationships look like. Because where you're from, relationships over here can, have different traits, different characteristics. uh, Wherever you go in this world, the relationships are going to operate at a different speed. Well, I should say this: they will operate at a different frequency. So think about it in frequency. What you have to learn and what you have to understand is for yourself, what is your frequency and what is the frequency of the other people that you were talking with. What you have to do, I mean, you're not going to change the fact that you're coming from different cultures. What you have to do is you have to find basically a middle type frequency where you and the other person can can meet, can exchange, and have proper understanding. So when you're in that spectrum with an individual and you're feeling confident and you feel like you have set boundaries and the person is respecting your boundaries and the person is respecting you and the person is understanding that you have to be your own advocate for your own life, then you are really setting the stage for healthy encounters, for healthy relationships. So I do want to caution you. There are a lot of people on these apps and these groups where they're gonna want you bad, and that's true. That is totally legit. They're gonna want you bad. They're gonna pursue you. Do not get swept up in that. And another thing that I would have to say is that you know, we all have gone through things in life. Every one of us has been through things in life, traumatic experiences, times in our life when we were depressed, maybe more anxious. You have to be mindful that you are going to some level or another, you're going to encounter people that, that have had their own struggles and that they're working through those struggles. And a lot of people are really making real strides in those struggles. But the other thing is that when you're talking about and when you're dealing with a culture, a civilization that operates in relationship space on a different frequency, in a different way, um, you could have some serious complications if you don't learn to balance boundaries. When you don't, let me rephrase this. You have to balance boundaries. You have to balance cultural understanding, and you have to balance the way in which you understand an individual. And I really like the idea that when you're talking to somebody over here in Southeast Asia, if, for instance, somebody says something that probably catches you off guard or you think it might be maybe even borderline offensive, um, a part of being an adaptable expat is being able to remain cool, remain calm, remain collected. Because the fact is that the way people speak English here is not going to be the same way that they speak it where you're from. They're not going to speak English the same way that you speak English. So what that means is that there are going to be misunderstandings. That is undeniable. There are going to be misunderstandings that you have to have the wherewithal to withstand misunderstandings, where you have the capacity for there to be a misunderstanding. Because here's the deal: in any relationship you're dealing with, there's going to be misunderstandings. But especially when you're dealing with an intercultural or an interracial relationship, misunderstandings are bound to happen. What you have to do, you have to have the mentality of patience. You have to have just patience, really patience, a willingness to learn, a willingness to understand, and patience. So that's this is what I'm trying to do over here, just personally speaking, without getting, into too many personal details because I really don't want to do that. But what I'm saying is that learn to balance learn to balance the cultural understandings, learn to balance, you know, boundaries and balance the individual, just those three things. Or just do what you can to maintain balance. And along with that is that in this region of the world, in Southeast Asia, harmony is really valued. Like you're just not going to come across somebody that's going to get in your face, yell at you, and just go off like what we have in America. It's not like that here. You don't really have like Karens over here like you do in the States. That's not to say there's some ladies that are not that are not Karens. There are going to be some that are kind of similar, I guess, but it's just different. You're going to have all sorts of experiences with people. So expect that when you're coming to Southeast Asia, that yeah, you're going to have some experiences that are going to be positive, some that are going to be not so positive. But what I'm saying is that the level of conflict that you are accustomed to in the West is probably nowhere near anything that goes on over here. And I'm speaking in terms of a personal experience. A lot of the times, so long as someone is not jealous, you're going to have harmony. So if you want to maintain harmony, balance those three things we were talking about, and take your time. Just be really cool about stuff. Be really cool. And be respectful. That's the other thing, is that a lot of times, and I've heard about this from people here from different countries that have encountered Americans, is that a lot of times Americans can be very harsh, very direct, and over here that really rubs people the wrong way. I can be a very direct person in the right setting. However, whenever I'm engaged in intercultural relations, I guess you could say, I do what I can to absolutely just make sure that I'm representing myself well, representing my own people well. Because here's the deal: uh, you really, what's really going to help you, and what helps our own people, wherever, or your people too, is a kind of grassroots diplomacy. What does that mean? That means always being kind. That means always being respectful. That means, maintaining positive rapport of even where the other person is from, even if it's, a country that maybe your government that doesn't necessarily like. Um, a lot of times, when you're out here, you're just a tourist or one of those things. Yeah, I mean, it could even be with other tourists that are from different countries. Just be cool. Just be chill, because you never know how anything could work out. You really don't. Maybe you click with a local, maybe you click with somebody else. What's ultimately important is that you represent yourself the best way and that you keep your cool. So that's pretty much it for this episode of the Expat Odyssey. If you liked this content, if you liked this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And please click the notification bell. I'm putting out videos quite frequently. Today, I've just been in a really big video making mood. So it's my thing today. So we'll have more videos coming out soon. In the meantime, thank you so much for your time. And like I always say, everybody, take care. Bye bye.